Oh, I can project to the last row. Don't worry about that. Amen, brother. Yeah. We used to have to sing on stage and everything. Anyway, let's start again. I'm going to tell you about a retired Marine that decided to teach high school. And during the summer, he also played softball, and so he got injured when he was playing softball and broke a few ribs and things. So they decided that they would put a cast on him, but it was a very minimal cast, and so it was able to fit under his shirt and, wasn't too obtrusive or really able to be seen. The high school that he was teaching at was known for its rowdiness and, delinquent type of kids and various things. And so he knew that his work was kind of cut out for him a little bit. And so he came in the first day, and he went over and he opened up the window to kind of air the place out. And, of course, all the rowdy kids were in there and all the delinquents and ne'er-do-wells and all. And so they were kind of giving him trouble and various things. And the breeze began to blow in the window. And as it did, his tie started kind of flapping as he was starting to teach. And so they were kind of being rowdy and everything. And so he reached down and he grabbed the stapler and he opened it up and he put his tie there and he stapled it right to his chest. And apparently he had no problems with anybody the rest of the year. So so yes. We are going to talk about the book of Esther for just a little bit. We are going to start into James in June. And so we're going to hit James in June, but I wanted to just kind of talk about a couple things. But the Lord kind of impressed this particular thing on me this week, and that's why we sang I Have a Destiny also. We'll talk about that. Kurt, go to my first slide. Does anybody know what this is? Okay, solitaire, and what kind of solitaire? Spider Solitaire. Now, how many of you have ever played solitaire? Have you ever played it on a computer? Okay, very good. We used to play it at New Horizons all the time, and in between breaks and various things. And it was back then, and this would have been late 90s, I guess, I discovered Spider Solitaire. And if you are familiar with solitaire, you know that you deal the cards and you have it go from king to queen to jack to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 2, and then 3, 2, and then the ace, right? The difference with Spider Solitaire is that you have all 52 cards on the board at the same time. And so you're moving these around and all, and once you get the whole suit from the king all the way down to the ace, then it kind of, and then it goes down here in the corner, right? Well, I kind of got into playing this again on my phone in the last few weeks because I really enjoy it, and it's relaxing, and I don't have to think a whole lot. And there is some strategy to it because it's kind of, you've got to calculate moves ahead of time and stuff. Well, if I move this card here, then, I've got to uncover this one and I got to move it over here and all that stuff, right? Okay, so what does this have to do with the book of Esther? I'm going to tell you what it has to do with the book of Esther. Because in Spider Solitaire, it's very interesting because you can get very frustrated. They say that every hand is winnable. They say that every one that it deals to you, the hand is winnable if you can figure it out and if you've got the strategy to do it. There are very few that I have not been able to figure out. And there's some that I have, and I had to start all over again, try it again. But they say that every hand is winnable. What you have to do is you have to have that strategy to be able to move things along. And then all of a sudden, it's like several of those just fall into place, and they all come in, and then they go down there, right? And after a little while of that, then you win. Okay? So I want you to keep that in mind as we are looking at the book of Esther here for a moment. So if you've got your Bibles with you, Old Testament, book of Esther. When we talk about the book of Esther, we are talking about the Medes and the Persians. So the Median and the Persian Empire, which ruled the world at this time. And Xerxes the Great, which this is about 518 BC, is this story. So Xerxes the Great. He is the son of Darius. And Darius was also called Darius the Great. Who remembers who King Darius was? Anybody remember? With Daniel. Yeah, exactly. And so he was in Daniel's time. And then Xerxes the Great was his son who ruled after him. And they were the kings of the Medes and the Persians. Okay? So what happens here is that in the first part of Esther, in chapter number 1, it starts out with a story. We all like a good story. I like a good story. This is what happened during the time of Xerxes. The Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Cush. Huge, massive amount of land that this man ruled over. At the time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa. And in the 3rd year of the reign, he gave a banquet for all of his nobles and officials, the military leaders of Persia and Media. The princes and the nobles of the provinces were present. So he throws this big party. Let's say, for instance, that it's 127 different provinces. It's 127 different counties. It's 127 different little states, or whatever it is. And he throws this banquet. And as he's throwing the banquet, this banquet begins to go on, and it is a gathering that he gathers all of these nobles and all of these people together. And for 180 days, he takes them through all of his wealth and the wealth of his kingdom. And then at the end of that, he decides to have a party that lasts for a week, 7 days. So it's a whole drunken thing that's going on. Now, in the meantime, his queen, Vashti, also is throwing a party for all of the women that are involved, because the men were separate and then they have the women and all, and so she's throwing this party. At a certain particular point, Xerxes, with all of his drunken people, decide that they want to, that he wants to show off Vashti and parade her before everybody to show her beauty. And Vashti refuses, which is a no-no, right? So this makes Xerxes very angry. And so Esther starts into this. And on the 7th day, he was drunk. He commands Vashti to come. She refuses. As you're looking at Esther, he got pretty ticked off because it was a misogyny thing. You didn't refuse the queen, or the king, right? Even if you were the queen, you didn't refuse him. And so he got mad. So he was embarrassed. He was humiliated. He consulted his advisors. And they basically told him that something has to be done about this, right? And Vashti had to be removed as queen because you didn't say no to the king. So what happens is that he removes Vashti as the queen, and he puts out an edict searching in all of the land for all of the fair maidens, all the fair virgins, to be able to come to the palace, and he is going to choose a new queen. Now, keep that in mind for just a moment, okay? So this is what's happening here in chapter number 1. So he sends out this decree, and in chapter number 1, verse number 5, he comes down and he sends all of this. Let me see. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, verse number 19. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. Also, let the king give the royal position to someone else who is better than she. He puts out this decree that she is never to come into his presence again. Now that's pretty strong. Okay, so keep that in mind. As we go to verse number 2, or chapter number 2, Now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shemel, the son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by the Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, among whom taken captives was Jehoiakim, the king of Judah. Now, Mordecai was a descendant of Kish. Kish was from the same tribe that Saul came from earlier. Okay, so they were related. And Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. And Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her mother and father died. So we see Esther entering the picture. Esther's name is myrtle wood, which basically myrtle wood is something that blooms all year long, and it's very fragrant, and it's very wonderful, and it's always in bloom, and it's never withering. So this is what Esther's name means. Let's go back to Spider Solitaire for a second. As you move cards around, and then all of a sudden something comes together. It's important in the game. In this particular case, God was up to something again because he had to save the Jewish people again, right? They were always in need of saving. And he had to do that. But in order to do that, he had to move some pieces around on the board. And he had to move Vashti out of the way so that then his chosen one, Esther, could come into play. Okay? We're gonna apply this to our lives in a little bit here. So before, this is down in verse number 12 of 2, before a young woman's turn came to go into King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 months with perfume and cosmetics. Now, ladies, wouldn't this be wonderful? You had to go a whole year of mani-pedi, right? You had to have all of these things done to you and for you for a whole year before you could even go into the presence of the king. Okay? So this was starting to prepare all of these maidens. If you skip on down to verse number 17, this is chapter 2 still. Now the king was attracted to Esther more than any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And I want you to notice there that she had favor with the king. God not only moved her into position, but also gave her favor with the king so that she was picked out of thousands of other people, thousands of other women, to be the queen of the Medes and the Persians. And this was the most powerful army that was on earth at this point. So Esther is made queen. As the story goes on, Mordecai discovers a plot that somebody is plotting to kill Xerxes. And he makes it known, and he gains favor with the people that he makes it known with. As this begins to happen here, the pieces are still falling together, and God's moving pieces around on the board there. They're all falling together. Now, as we look at this, first of all, there are things that happen in years in my life that are good things and they're bad things, right? If they're good things, we can say yay. Everybody say yay. Yay. If they're bad things, everybody say boo. Okay, so as we kind of look at this just a moment here. Esther was a Jew, and she was taken captive as a slave. So everybody say boo. That's a bad thing. Boo. She was taken as a slave. Mordecai, her uncle, became her guardian because her parents died. That was a bad thing. Everybody say boo. Boo. Yep, tragedy. However, as God begins to do certain things in Esther's life, she starts to gain favor, and she gained favor with Xerxes. Now, that's a good thing. So everybody say yay. Yay! Right? Okay, so she was made queen. Everybody say yay. Yay! That's a good thing. Mordecai uncovers the conspiracy. So he is placed right at the right place at the right time. The Bible isn't specific about what happened, but somehow he uncovered this thing, which also is a good thing. Everybody say yay. Yay! Okay. And so when the report, this is verse number 23, when the report was investigated and found to be true, the two officials were impaled on poles. The Medes and the Persians, you're going to see this all through the book of Esther. They like to impale people on poles. Okay? And all this was recorded in the book of the annals in the presence of the king. Now, I didn't do a lot of research on that particular book, but I would like to read that book if I can come across it one of these times. Okay, now, there's a guy by the name of Haman. And he's kind of a bad guy. So everybody say boo. Boo. We don't like Haman. Okay. So Haman, he begins to kind of snake his way to power. And he's arrogant. He likes lots of opulence. He likes to be important in the kingdom. You and I know people that are like that. Sometimes we work with people that are like that they do very little work, but they like lots of recognition for it, that type of thing. And so he is one of those type of guys. Well, he kind of puts out a decree that every time that he walks through the city streets, everybody needs to bow down to him, right? So here's Mordecai, the Jew. Haman comes out of the palace one day, and he's walking along, and everybody's bowing down to him, and Mordecai's just standing there. And he stops, and he says, you're supposed to bow down to me. And Mordecai says, I'm not bowing down to you. You're nothing. And so it makes Haman real mad. So he kind of all of a sudden has it out for Mordecai. Okay? Everybody say boo. Boo. Okay, so Mordecai will not bow down and honor Haman as he walks by. Haman finds out that Mordecai is a Jew. And so he wants to kill Mordecai, but not only does he want to kill Mordecai, he decides that he wants to obliterate all the Jews because of all the things that they do and because they don't like him and he doesn't like them. And so he tells King Xerxes that the Jews will not obey his law. So he's kind of got the air of the king, and he begins to kind of manipulate those type of things. Everybody say boo, boo. And so the decree goes out to kill the Jews from Haman. Everybody say boo. That's a bad thing. So Mordecai goes into public mourning, which is also a sad thing. So we're going to say boo on that one too. Esther sees this public mourning that he's doing and sends him some clothes and says, get up and quit your mourning there. And as we go on with chapter number 4, when we look at chapter number 4 of Esther here, and we come down to verse number 12, Mordecai is in mourning with sackcloth and ashes because Haman wants to kill the Jewish people and obliterate them. Keep in mind that they have been taken captive by the Medes and the Persians. They are in captivity at this point, and another threat to obliterate the Jewish people has gone out, and so this makes Mordecai sad, and he's in mourning. Okay? So Esther tells him, get up, stop being in sackcloth and ashes, and, we're going to do something about this. So verse number 12, when Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back the answer. And he said, do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For you will remain silent at this. For if you remain silent at this time, Relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position, or to the throne, for such a time as this. This is kind of the whole thrust of the message tonight, for such a time as this. Mordecai says to her, if we all get wiped out, you're going to get wiped out too because you're a Jew. So don't think that you're not. But he said, if you decide not to help deliver the Jewish people, God will raise somebody else up. Now, this is a very important principle because you and I are expendable. And people in Christianity are expendable. And unfortunately, what we do is we lose sight of that. Because we like to have our eyes on people, we like to have our eyes on personality, we like to have our eyes on people that are flamboyant, or maybe they're very intelligent, or they, whatever it is. And this is why it is that this has gone on over and over and over again in the Christian world, that when we have a fallen Christian leader, that we have many, many people that fall and decide not to follow God anymore because of that. And that's why it's very important that when we have people that are in the limelight, or maybe they're celebrities, or maybe they're famous, or maybe they're in Hollywood, and they have come to know the Lord, and everybody wants to promote them immediately. Oh, so-and-so, he's our brother now, and, let's get him on the speaking circuit, and we're send him around and all that kind of thing. And he hasn't been taught anything, and he hasn't been discipled yet, and he hasn't been tried or true yet. And all of a sudden he falls back into sin, and everybody's devastated, right? And you can think of church leaders and pastors and all kinds of different people in the body of Christ throughout the years. I can think of many, many, many different ones, that when they have fallen, that they have devastated a lot of people. What's the point of what Mordecai is telling Esther? Look, God wants to use you, but don't think that if you decide to say, no, I don't want to be used of you, God, that there isn't somebody else that he'll bring in to take care of it. That's a spiritual principle, right? But he says, but if you realize what God is calling you to, who knows but that you have come to the throne for such a time as this? Because God has been moving those cards around on the board so that all of a sudden, the king all the way down to the ace. Okay? I'm going to expound on that more in a little bit. Okay. So Esther calls a fast. When she calls a fast, when the queen calls a fast and says, I'm not going to eat anything for 3 days, none of her people ate anything for 3 days either. That had to be tough. It's not like when the pastor says, oh, we're going to fast and pray about this, and you might you're going to fast sweets, or you're going to fast going to McDonald's this time, or whatever. No, Esther says we're going to fast and we're going to pray for 3 days. And all of her servants and all of her people that attended her, and everybody doesn't get to eat for 3 days. Okay? This is what happens. And so she calls this fast. And at this time in history, it was very important that you be summoned by the king. So it wasn't like in the movies where the queen can just show up in the throne room and talk to the king anytime that she wants to. Because she has to come and present herself, and then the king has to put down his scepter, saying that he accepts her to come into the throne room. And if he doesn't do that, she gets her head chopped off. Or in the case of the Medes and the Persians, she gets impaled on a pole. Okay? So she fasts and prays about this for 3 days and sends word back to Mordecai and says, okay, I am going to go in and I'm going to petition the king. And she says, and if I perish, I perish. Okay? So keep that in mind as we're going here. So she gets dressed in her robes and her finery, and she goes and she stands outside the throne room, and she hasn't even seen the king for a month. at this point. He has not summoned her. He has not talked to her. He has not gone in unto her. He has not had any interaction with her for a month. And so she comes, she stands outside the throne room, and he sees her. She still has favor with him because he loves her, because he is enamored with her. And so what he does is he extends his gold scepter to come in. And as she comes in to talk to the king, she comes in and she says, I tell you what I want. And the king is so in love with her that he says, ask anything that you want, and I will give you up to half of my kingdom. Now that's quite a deal. That's like the president saying, I like you so much. I think that you can kind of be over from California over to Mississippi, or to Missouri or something like that. And I will give you half of my kingdom, he says. So she says, I don't really want half of your kingdom, but I would like for you and Haman to come to a banquet that I'm throwing today. And so the king says, yeah, okay, yeah, that's no problem. And so they go to the banquet. Now Haman at this point, he's riding high because he's getting to sit at the cool kids table, right? So not only is everybody in the country except for Mordecai bowing down to him, now he gets to eat with the king and queen. So in Haman's mind, that was a good thing. So everybody say yay. Yay for Haman. Okay. So he goes out again, and there's his thorn in the flesh, Mordecai. Mordecai still won't bow down. Haman's furious. He goes home and he pouts to his wife. He says, what am I going to do about this guy? He's a thorn in my flesh. He will not bow down. He will not do the things that I say. So what's his wife say? Well, you've got a pole that's 50 cubits high. How about if you impale him on it? And Haman thinks, oh, that's a good idea. I think that I will impale Mordecai, which is a bad thing. So everybody say boo. Boo. Okay? So God is still moving the cards around on the field. What happens? The king can't sleep. When he can't sleep, he thinks that he will get up and look at his iPhone and check his Facebook profile. And so he gets up and he calls for the scrolls and he begins to read. And he finds out that Mordecai basically saved his life by finding out of that conspiracy that happened. So when the king can't sleep, nobody can sleep, so he calls his advisors, and he says, I see that this is recorded in the annals of our history here, that this guy by the name of Mordecai saved my bacon. What was done for him? And everybody started flipping through their yellow legal pads, and they said, King, we can't find anything that was done for him. And he says, that's unconscionable. We have to reward this man, right? So as he has gone into the banquet with Esther, she says to him, he asks her again, he says, well, what would you like? And she says, I would like for you and Haman to come back to a banquet again tomorrow. And then I will tell you what I want. And so that's when the king has the dream and everything, and calls his advisors and says, okay, well, we got to do something for this guy, right? So the king takes this very, very seriously, okay? The king says to his advisor, who is in the outer court? And his advisor says, well, Haman's out there. King says, okay, go and get Haman and bring him in. When Haman entered, the king asked him, what should be done for the man the king delights in to honor? And all of a sudden Haman puffs up. Now Haman thought to himself, who is there that the king would rather honor than me? So he answers the king. Now you can see this guy's wheels turning, right? He thinks that he's going to be honored, so the sky's the limit, and he's going to tell the king everything that he wants. And he says, for the man the king delights to honor, have them bring a royal robe, that the king has worn, and a horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. Talk about arrogance. It reminds me of the same type of arrogance that the devil had when he said, I think I'll be like God, right? Same spirit. Then let the robe and the horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man the king delights to honor and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, this is what is done to the man the king delights to honor. So Haman says this, right? Well, you know the story because the thing backfires. And the king, and Xerxes says, yeah, that is a great idea. I want you to go and to get Mordecai and bring him here because he's the one that we're going to honor. And you can see that Haman, I was going to use a phrase, but I won't. He was seething. He was mad, right? Okay, so second day comes, banquet. Esther makes her petition to Xerxes and says there was a decree that was put out that all of the Jews that have been taken into captivity are to be destroyed. And Xerxes is taken aback. And he says, wait a minute, I didn't put that decree out. What's going on? I sent no decree to destroy all these people, because he knew at that point that Esther was a Jew. And that if he destroyed all the Jews, he was going to have to destroy Esther, who he loved. Right? So he says, I didn't put that decree out. Who put that decree out? And Esther says, this guy right here did, Haman. And Haman's squirming at that point, And Xerxes is so mad that he pretty much is going to blow his top. So instead of doing that, he gets up and he leaves the banquet hall. And he leaves Haman there with Esther. Now, Haman at this point knows that he's in hot water. And so what he does is he falls down before Esther and he falls onto the couch and he's begging for his life. Xerxes all of a sudden turns around, comes back in, and sees Haman on the same couch with Esther and thinks that he is attempting to be forward with her. Right? So what's Xerxes do? He takes Haman out and he impales him on the pole. The same pole that was meant for Mordecai. Not only that, he then sends out a decree, because Haman had 10 sons, that they track down all of his sons and impale all of them on a pole. And then not only that, because this is the way that it was back in these days, to track down all of the family of all of these 10 sons and all of Haman and impale all of them on a pole. So he destroys the entire Haman family, yes, I'm blank anyway, all of Haman's family. Haman actually was a descendant of Agag, who was the king of the Amalekites, if you remember those stories back in David's time and back with Goliath and all of those people. So he was actually a descendant of them. So he was a very evil guy. So they wiped out his ancestry, basically, at that point. Now, he honors Mordecai, and I want to end with something here. Go ahead and stand with me. I want to end with the entire 10th chapter of Esther. King Xerxes imposed tribute throughout the empire to its distant shores. So this was all the way from India to Kush, 127 provinces. And all his acts of power and might together, with a full account of the greatness of Mordecai, whom the king had promoted. Are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of the Medes and the Persians? Mordecai the Jew was second in the rank to King Xerxes, preeminent among the Jews and held in high esteem by his many fellow Jews, because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all the Jews. And that's the entire 10th chapter of the book of Esther. And it all started because Mordecai followed God, and he came to Esther, and he said, you got to do the right thing. And if you don't do the right thing, God will raise up somebody else to do it. But wouldn't it be great if you were part of the plan? And who knows but that you have come to the throne for such a time as this. My whole point with Spider Solitaire and moving things around on the board and the way that God positioned Esther to be able to take the throne, and not only to take the throne, but to also save all of the Jewish people, was that God had a plan. There are things in yours and my life that we have prayed for that have not come to fruition. We may feel like we're in captivity, and we may feel like we're in bondage, and that we have been taken into a place that we did not want to go into. We may feel that there are parts of our family that are not right and that have been taken into places that we did not want them to go into. And my message tonight is that God still has a plan, and he's still moving things around. And when everything falls into line the way that he needs them to fall into line, then all of a sudden, and it's over. And I hold on to that promise, Jeannie and I do, for us and for our family and for certain things that are going on in our family. And there are some of you that are holding on to some of those things, whether it's with your job or with a family or with your relationships or whatever it is, you're holding on to that. Because Satan wants to destroy relationships. He wants to destroy the relationship that you have with your family. He wants to destroy the relationship that you have with coworkers, with people that you are neighbors with. Whatever it is, Satan wants to destroy that in the same way that he wanted to destroy the relationship that Adam and Eve had with God. But the good thing about it is that God still has a plan. He's still there. And just like in Spider Solitaire, sometimes I can look at that board and I just can't see how it is that it's actually going to get worked out. And then I'll push a button and I'll move a card, and all of a sudden it all starts to fall into place. And that's where some of you are right now. We have to trust God that we may just have to push a button and move a card, and he will make everything fall into place. So that's hope for you and me to continue to pray, to continue to ask God for the things that he has promised us, and that we know that he wants to do according to his will in our lives. And who knows, but have we come to this particular royal position for such a time as this? And that's what Esther's all about. And that's what it's like in years of my life. Father, I thank you for that. Because we just don't understand so much of the time. We're like walking around in a fog sometimes, and we're just putting one spiritual step in front of another, barely able to see the path that we are on. But Father, I thank you that you still have a plan, and that you are still the God of the universe, and that you have a plan for our lives. And Father, I'm asking for this congregation and for those who are listening in other areas, that you begin to move things around in place and put things in place and stack one thing on top of another and move one thing to a different position, so that all of a sudden things fall into place. And when those things fall into place, Father, let us be ready to take up that ministry to whatever it is. That when our children come back to you, that we're ready to see that. that when our healing comes, that we're ready to receive that. That where the salvation of a loved one or a friend comes, that we are able to minister and to help them. And in the same way that you positioned Esther to save the entire Jewish nation, Father, I know that you are positioning us to be able to minister and to see your favor and to see your plan fall into place. And Father, I thank you for that. Lord, let us take that to heart. Let us keep that in our heart, and let us hold on to that faith, knowing that you have never left us, will never forsake us, and that you have our best interests in mind. And Father, I thank you for that. In Jesus' name. Thank you, Father.